It'll be at the end, but I will do. Can they see me? Can they see me though? Can you tell? Right here.
Do not go just a little bit more this way.
Oh,
Just a little. Just a little. Right there.
Okay, yeah, because that's We're about to get started, everybody. Just a minute. Alright, can you hear me? Alright, we're about to get started. Alright, y'all ready to talk about battery energy storage systems? What they are, who they impact, and what you should know about them? Yeah. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with what is a battery energy storage system. For those that do not know, a battery energy storage system purpose is to be a backup energy source for our grid or infrastructure should our power go out for incidences like Beryl and Uri, such as the hurricane and winter storms. So what their purpose is they are to store additional energy from our grid. There are two types. There are wind and there are solar, and then that's for the renewable energy, and then they have what's called a standalone site, which is what a lot of the 900 you see coming into Texas are. They are built next to booster stations to store that extra energy, and then they sell it back to the grid in incidences of inclement weather or whatever causes it to go down. And on average, a 100 megawatt site provides an additional 2 hours of power based off the transmission lines determines where. So for instance, Rayburn primarily does electric for Rockwall County. So for instance, near my home, a lot of the details you're going to hear are based off of the Amador site, which is near my home. But know that this is just the one that's already started, and I have a lot of information from there, but this is not exclusive to the Amador site. So again, I'm going to state the Amador location is to provide additional energy for Rockwall County. It does not provide energy to Van Zandt County. It does not provide jobs to Van Zandt County. It is not for us, okay? So let's go a little bit further as to what that looks like. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to play you this little video, and it's going to give you some education on what they look like on the inside. Can I hear it? Oh, can't hear it. Sorry, technical difficulties, stand by.
Inside a typical battery energy storage box.
Each one of the little silver boxes is about 22 small lithium-ion battery cells.
And how many homes could a system like this power when it's online?
A system like this could probably power about 22 homes just for this one unit.
Okay, so did you catch that? One unit can provide power to 22 homes. And again, this is not for Van Zandt County. This is for Rockwall County, and only for 2 hours max for the entire site, not for the entire unit. So a 100 megawatt site provides power for 2 hours to Rockwall County. And then we're going to go into what that looks like if you live next to a battery energy storage system. This is in Mason, Texas. This is sent to me from Chris Dyer. Chris Dyer is a retired Marine. He served his country as a gunny for 20 years. Him and his wife moved to this location. They just wanted to live peace and quiet. And they built this 22 feet from his back fence. So I want you to hear what it sounds like and what it looks like at night. And also note that they live near deer as well. And he states that the deer activate these lights consistently and constantly.
So this is, which you can see at 7:52 on Friday the 14th, Valentine's Day. Peace and quiet. Nathan, whatever I think his last name is, and Peter Marshall both say, hey, you'll never know what anything good. We'll be so proud. We're talking about, and these have been running for probably 2 hours now.
So it's kind of hard to hear him, but what he's saying is that that is the sound he's been hearing in his country home for 4 hours. And when it started, when it was operational, of course you hear construction and you hear loud noises from that. And then when they started to get it turned on, they had issues with the batteries already. As a matter of fact, Mr. Dyer happens to have a habit of going over there and asking them questions. And one of the questions he asked them, because they were already pulling batteries out before it was operational, and he asked them why they were pulling them out of the units already when it's not operational. And they told him because they buy the cheap equipment from China that consistently malfunctions. And we're going to get into that more in a minute. But this is what it sounds like now that it's operational. For hours on end, in the middle of the country where you're supposed to hear birds and quiet, you're hearing these loud electrical sounds at your backyard. And note, it's 22 feet from his backyard. Here in Edgewood, we have one being built 1,200 feet from a school. They are built within less than 1,000 feet of homes. They just do not have regulations to stop them within a certain distance of where they're built of children, family, or otherwise. They build them where they want them. And typically, they target unincorporated areas because they do not require permits or regulations to do so, which is why you're seeing an influx of over 900 planned in Texas right now. That's just in Texas. So going to the Amador site, in this top left picture with the orange, that is their proposed site. It's supposed to be the 100 megawatt location. Note the image on the right with the green. That is what the owner has expressed to us is their ability to expand into. They don't have plans at this time, but yet they made plans for should they choose to expand already. And that's what that would look like, potentially. Now, on this bottom picture, you're going to see a few things. You're going to see this bottom white, which is has the blue to it. That is the electric booster station for Rayburn, which has been doing construction as well, and increasing the capacity inside of that. On the back end, it's kind of hard to tell, but that what looks like brown, that is a watershed for Lacey Fork, which is Cedar Creek Reservoir. And then you see that green line that goes up the middle, that is the Explorer Federal Pipeline that goes directly along the edge of that property. Now, a 100 megawatt location has on average 150,000 pounds of lithium. One site, 150,000 pounds of lithium. Now, think about what's in your cell phone. Think about what's in just a small little circle battery. And consider the heat that gives off, and then consider 150,000 pounds and how much heat that gets off. Now, note, lithium can go from normal temperature to thousands of degrees in temperature in seconds. Not minutes, not hours, literally seconds above 3,000 degrees or more is what you're looking at. And that's where you start to get into a problem. So going into that pipeline further, the red, so you understand, it's not just the Whitten location that has pipelines. Those red lines are pipelines that go throughout the entire Van Zandt County. And they are building more than 7 of these sites, as of right now, are planned. And you see all those pipelines. And then note the one on the left is the federal pipeline near Whitten. It is over 1,800 miles long. Just that one pipeline is over 1,800 miles long. It goes from Hammond, Indiana, all the way down to, I don't remember what it was in Texas, but it was down by Galveston in Texas. That's how far it is. And it carries gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, which in and of itself is highly flammable. So if you have lithium that gets up over 3,000 degrees in temperature next to a pipeline that carries jet fuel, it begs the question of how much heat does it take to penetrate those pipelines before you're now having explosions from that as well. Remember that watershed I mentioned for Cedar Creek Reservoir? This left picture shows you that Cedar Creek Reservoir that touches into Van Zandt County. The picture in the middle shows you that it's not quite a half a mile, it's just over a quarter mile to that watershed from that build site. And then over here on the right, you can't see it very well, but there's a little red dot. That little red dot is that watershed that you see in the middle off of 47 for the Lacey Fork Reservoir. Now, if you notice, it's still in the blue because this is part of the water source for Tarrant Regional. And that is important because Tarrant Regional provides water for over 2 million individuals from Jack and Wise County past Henderson and further. These are all the locations that Cedar Creek provides water to. Could you imagine the damage done if that watershed is damaged? And you may think, what are the odds? What happens if it's damaged? Well, the thing is that it's not just the watershed you have to worry about. We also have the Wilcox Aquifer. Now that one's even larger. The subsurface for the aquifer is over 25,000 square miles just for that aquifer that spans 66 counties. And again, what happens if it's contaminated? Is that even an option? What happens, and is it something we should really be concerned about? Is there no chance? Is there a high chance? There's been more than 50 runaways since 2020. Everyone might have heard of Fredericktown, Missouri at this point. Over 3 miles out, they found dead fish and wildlife after the lithium processing plant exploded in Runaway. And you may think, well, that's not a battery storage. Why should we be concerned? They had state-of-the-art safety measures in place to prevent this from happening. But at the end of the day, you still have lithium off-gassing and runaways occurring, and it's still emitting those high toxic heavy metals. And then over here on the right with the seals, you're looking at the sloughs in Moss Landing. And they have the San Jose University that was doing testing already there because it's a protected area. So they have the before the runaways at Moss Landing that happened in January 16th, and you have the after for testing. Now, it's important to note, if you do not know this yet, Moss Landing has had 3 runaway occasions and is still in runaway right now with the most recent since January 16th, and it is February 20th. And they have now reactivated 2 more times since the initial event. Matter of fact, if you go to their Facebook page, it's the Moss Landing Facebook page, they're stating that they are smelling and tasting chlorine, which is hydrogen fluoride right now, which is highly toxic. What they are finding is on the left is where they did the testing areas. So over here, where you see the little masses, that's where they went out individuals, not the company, not Vistra, not the camp, not the state. The individuals went out and they tested their soil and water. They found thousands of microns of cobalt, lithium, manganese, and nickel, which in high concentrations like that completely destroy the biodiversity of the land and soil, but also keep the plants from being able to regrow. It hinders their ability to reproduce and regrow new plants and wildlife. And on the right, where you see all these numbers, those are individuals that reported symptoms after the runaway. And the symptoms include headaches, bleeding noses, people who don't have asthma were having asthmatic fits, flu-like symptoms, and painful rashes all over their body, multiples of them. And those are the symptoms. What you're seeing there is heavy metal toxicity at that point. And that comes from the lithium and nickel and cobalt in those high quantities. So not only is Vistra and the company stating there's no impact, there's no issue, I have been sent a spreadsheet of the individuals that went out and did the testing. I have the actual read of the chemicals that they found and the lab reports. And these are the individuals that reported symptoms. So you may also wonder, why are we talking about Moss Moss Landing so much? What does that have to do with us? Right here, you are seeing a lawsuit from Blue Orca, which is against Fluence. Fluence Energy, if you do not know, is building the batteries at the Amador site, and they build most of the batteries. They have over 160 LLCs underneath their name. And they're building batteries at this location. And in the red, it's kind of hard to see, but that lawsuit right there is against Vistra at Moss Landing, against Fluence, for runaway that occurred in 2021. And another interesting detail on this lawsuit is you're going to see where Diablo Energy also has a lawsuit against Fluence Energy. But what I find most interesting is they also have a lawsuit against them from their parent company, Siemens. So they have AES and Siemens are the parent company for Fluence Energy. Siemens, the parent company, has a lawsuit against them for faulty equipment use and investor fraud. They're already selling off their shares. Which begs the question, what happens to those batteries if Fluence goes under, right? Who's going to clean them up? Who's going to take care of them? So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like in the news with some of these incidents.
That breaking news, just horrible. A massive lithium battery fire in Surprise, and at least 8 firefighters hurt in an explosion.
We want to get it. Yeah, well, Steve and Katie, this is a very active scene, and what we know now is that the injured firefighters were transported to several valley hospitals, some of them by ground, some of them by helicopter. I want to step out of the way to give you a look at what we're seeing out here, a very large response. We've seen firefighters and fire agencies from multiple agencies out here on the scene.
This not only affected fire crews who were out there, but people who were nearby in the West Valley going about their normal Friday night when all of a sudden they hear something more, a loud boom interrupting normal Friday night activity.
Yeah, we just talked to one dad actually. He was at baseball practice with his son.
She was all early. I mean, it was a big boom, and gosh, they were all going to stop practice when it was going on.
Now let's get to developing news out of Monterey County. A fire burning in one of the world's largest lithium battery storage facilities, and it continues to burn more than 24 hours after it started. Residents near the Moss Landing facility, they're still out of their homes this afternoon.
I think the biggest thing we're worried about right now, Aaron, is air quality, and we're getting very few answers.
We don't have a lot of answers, and except that thick black smoke that you see coming up from this fire over the course of the last 36 hours or so, that is so concerning. It is releasing chemicals into the air. That we know. The real concern and what we don't know a lot about is the potential impact on people.
But the concern on the outside is what is being pushed out into the air. That's why you're seeing evacuation orders issued in this area. The fire started after 3 this afternoon, but it really grew in the evening. Around 1,500 people are under those evacuation orders. And then in addition, beyond those evacuation orders, officials as far north as Santa Cruz County are asking people to stay inside and close their doors and windows and to shut off air systems until further notice. A Monterey County supervisor spoke to just how serious the situation is.
Well, there's no way to sugarcoat it. This is a disaster.
This is important. I'm going to touch on this. So these individuals, these locations had fire and hazmat nearby. They had emergency preparedness for these situations. Here in Van Zandt County, we have one full-time fire department, and that's in Canton. These unincorporated areas that they are choosing have volunteer fire department. They do not have the equipment or the PPE for these types of fires. And to be clear, fire personnel show up in their PPE. It is not for micron level heavy metals, toxic chemicals. We already have an influx of fire personnel getting cancer already because their gear is more for thermal, not chemical. You have to show up in full hazmat gear to protect from these micron particles to not get in your body and cause that cancer and that toxicity. And you may wonder, because you cannot put lithium, or you cannot put water on lithium, so why the fire department at all? The purpose of the fire department is to show up to keep the temperature of the metal containers below a specific temperature. Now, I don't know if anybody in here ever cooks or does anything like that, but the temperature is roughly 176 degrees. And it does not take long for a metal container to get above 176 degrees. And you have 150,000 pounds of lithium. Each container has, we'll say 1,000. but you have multiples of these containers that cannot exceed 176 degrees. And you have them on this site with no fire personnel for over 15 miles, no hazmat for over 95 minutes. It's in downtown Dallas, and we've all driven these highways between 20 and 80 and 175. They're all under construction. So on a good day, it's 95 minutes, and that's being generous. And we need them to show up to determine evacuation zone. In Moss Landing, the evacuation area wasn't 1 mile, which is what they start at. The evacuation area at Moss Landing was 8 miles. It evacuated over 1,200 people. It went into indoor lockdown outside of that range. What indoor lockdown looks like is right now, they have it there in indoor lockdown. So you have winter, and you have these individuals in their home, not allowed to turn on their heat, their air, anything. You cannot have any outside air coming into your home. Mind you, this does not include your livestock or your animals. There are no protections in place for evacuation for them. So that rancher that's on that back end of that property with 300 head of cattle, what happens to his cattle? What does that look like for them? Because I can tell you that looking at Moss Landing's Facebook page, you had an individual that had his dog for 15 years, or it was about 13 years, I think is what it was. But his dog had strokes and seizures for 3 hours before it passed. You have birds with busted capillaries on their, and bleeding out of their nose. To give you context, that's just the animals. That's not including people and what their reactions are. And there's something that I find interesting on this is, oh, I think it went too far, so I'll go just go ahead and tell you it, bypass the last one, sorry. So in the last slide, what that was, and this is significant, is Senator Marco Rubio and 26 other Congress members signed a letter in reference to a specific company being a national security threat. That company is CATL, which is a CCP-owned company, which, if you do not know, is an actual enemy to America. CCP is a known enemy to America, and they build the equipment is built through CATL, which is owned by them. This is significant because if you haven't read our 855 documents that our fire marshal got back, CATL is building the control systems in the Amador site. They were removed from military bases due to national security threat. My question on that is, if this company is a national security threat, and they are building more than 900 in Texas and thousands across the United States into our infrastructure, connecting to transformers on our grid that are also built by this company, is that not also a national security threat? And I say that because where it skipped to here on our governor, Greg Abbott, that arrow is pointing to the fact that on this executive order by our governor, that CCP and China have threatened to use our infrastructure and grid to harm us in reference to energy generation, to harm our agriculture and food, such as, a watershed that provides millions of people with water, livestock that provides beef to people, and maybe farmland where we grow our own food. Matter of fact, Moss Landing, that fire impacted what's called the salad bowl of America in California, your greens. So if our food and our livestock are harmed, what do we do? Why are we allowing CATL to do this? And the problem is that this is a highly overlooked area. It should be looked into, and it has not been done. So recently, I was in a conversation with Joe Wise. He wrote an article in reference to cybersecurity. And he was explaining to me that cybersecurity does not have to be malicious. It can be unintentional. So going back to that lawsuit from 2021 against from Moss Landing against Fluence, that lawsuit, when they investigated the cause of that runaway, it was because of the system itself. Whenever the fire suppression system kicked on that was supposed to stop it from going into runaway, it went off at the wrong time and instead ended up being the reason for the runaway. It may not have been malicious, and here's the thing, even if it was, we couldn't prove it. There's no way to prove that it's malicious. So unintentional or not, it ended up doing significant harm to the environment and to the people, unintentionally or not. And there's been more than 50 cases of runaways from these control systems, because no other company builds them. It's only CATL that builds built these control systems. And what I find also interesting is not only does CATL build the batteries, but they built the fail-safes that's supposed to protect us from any incidents from the batteries. And we have more than 900 of these planned. And just in case you're wondering what Joe's background is, he does industrial cybersecurity. He worked at EPRI for over 15 years. He worked in reference to nuclear, coal, and oil energy, doing this exact thing. He left in 2002 before BESS became a major incident, but he has been investigating these softwares and these systems ever since, for over 15 years, and he has been stating that we need to pay attention to this. And the reason they're not paying attention is because the agencies that are supposed to watch these watch transmission. BESS systems fall into distribution in ERCOT. And what the issue is it's a lack of paying attention between software and engineering. So the engineers want to access it remotely because they want to know, is it have the right temperature? Is it having an issue? So they're watching for things going on in that regard, but they're not watching the zeros and ones. IT isn't watching the zeros and ones. They already found that there was extra equipment inside of the transformers and inside of the port cranes by the same company. And so there's nobody watching if there's any backdoor into these zeros and ones being emitted from this software. So what you're looking at is, really and truthfully, this company could go in and change 10 or 11 in the right location and alter the temperature, and because it only takes seconds to get above thousands of degrees, you're going to have a chain reaction all across the board if they do that. And it could be catastrophic, especially when you consider locations that provide water to millions of people and farmlands, and also the fact that you have more than 900 alone in Texas, and the fact that they have threatened to harm us. So what can we do? What are our options? So Cliff, I'm going to have you come up. He's going to go over what we're doing here in our county in reference to the fire code, the 855, and then also the 391 Commission and how we can utilize that to help ourselves in the meantime.
Yeah, first I want to say that the prior Commissioner's Court and the Commissioner's Court now, while I don't speak for the Commissioner's Court in general, I can tell you that everyone on that Commissioner's Court said they'll do anything they can to stop these projects. And the current Commissioner's Court has said the same thing. The problem is it's highly technical. So as an attorney, a lot of folks said, why in the world would they pick an attorney to be a road and bridge guy? We don't know sometimes where we are or where we've been put or why. But as soon as those things came up, I dove into the National Fire Protection Association, Chapter 855, and that is the regulations that our fire marshal is using now to extract all of the information from this company, all of their testing. We received back the testing from the letter that we sent in December. Tonda Curry, the district attorney, signed that letter, and that letter went out to them. They had 30 days, 20 business days to return with all of the testing that they had. The testing that they sent us failed. The batteries failed. There was a runaway. A runaway is when one battery ignites, it cannot ignite the other batteries in that same container. It failed that test. It also failed the test that as it burned and the smoke, the things that come out were flammable outside of the container. It failed. Also, the container failed to contain that fire, that runaway. That's what a runaway is, and that's what we have to work to stop. They cannot turn the switch on with failing tests. There are other tests that the fire marshal has requested now, and he is preparing to obtain a warrant to cause them to not be able to commission that system. We can't appear to be unreasonable. Do your testing. But we already have received failing tests. So he has sent back requests, and these requests are under the National Fire Protection Association, Chapter 855 and Chapter 101. Van Zant has, by default, adopted that as our fire regulation. and because it's a state regulation. So he is using that, and I am drafting letters, and I have drafted the first letter, and Tonda Curry sent it out. She had some red lines. We worked on it together. We got it out. Now, once they returned that, we told them, no, you have to have a permanent source of water, and you have to have all of your tests passed. Now, where are they going to get a permanent source of water? Out in Whitten. So we have set in front of them the targets that they have to meet. Can they meet it? But we're not giving up. We're not stopping. We're not standing down. There's not a way that they can go around the rules. And the fire marshal is prepared to fight this battle and continue this battle. And the commissioner's court is as well. I can tell you that right now. I don't speak for them all. But I've heard what they say when we're up there talking about 391. That is the next thing. After the 855 of NFPA, the 391 Commission is a regional planning commission that was just voted in last Wednesday. It was a unanimous vote to form a 391 commission for the county of Van Zandt to join with other political subdivisions and create a regional planning. And what this regional planning commission does is it gives us the opportunity to request information from the state and federal government. By more subdivisions coming together, it gives us the opportunity to have a strength that Van Zandt County does not have by itself. It gives an opportunity for Grand Saline to have a strength that they don't have by themselves, for Wills Point. And I have personally spoken with the county judge of Henderson County, and they are going through the process of looking at 391. What is it? Their county attorney was in the same position we were in when we first started looking at it. So they're looking at this, and they may also join. We're also looking at other East Texas counties that may want to participate with us in this. So every step that this commissioner's court can take has been taken. Every letter that we can. Now I have written a letter that is an introductory letter, and I have sent it to the judge and to Tonda Curry to review. And this letter will go to will be sent out by the fire marshal to each of the companies that have leased land for these kind of projects in Van Zandt County. We're letting them know in advance. You're going to have to follow every rule in the 855. You're going to have a permanent source of water, and we're not letting you slide. So, well, it's all the commissioners. We're all standing with one voice in this because we voted unanimously for the 391, and they've been nothing but a benefit to me and a help when it comes to writing the letters on the 855. So I would tell you that our county judge, our district attorney, our fire marshal, and the commissioner's court are standing with one voice on these things. So I appreciate them, and I appreciate the leadership that each one of these folks have shown in their own precincts.
I just realized I forgot to introduce him. That's Precinct 2 Commissioner Cliff Williams, by the way. So just to kind of expand on that, the 391 requires for agencies like ERCOT, Parks and Wildlife, EPA, TCEQ to have to work with us in reference to concerns of safety, welfare, and other. And it even includes for new construction and builds. And the more entities in our COG region, there's 14 counties, there's cities, and their special districts, it allows them to join us, and the more strands that we have tethered together to do this, the stronger success we have at this. And there have been cases where this has been used successfully. Judge Duhan out of Waller County actually used it in reference to the Trans-Texas Corridor. If you haven't heard of it, it's because it never got built. It would have gone from Mexico to Canada. It would have utilized over 300,000 acres of Texas land. And he used that by requiring EPA or coordinating with EPA in reference to this issue, and that's how it got stopped. And it's still stopped today because of that very reason.
So there are successful cases of this being used. And it was put into legislation specifically because Texas is an agricultural state. And this is to protect us from government overreach into our agricultural land. That is the purpose of the 391. And we have, like he stated, other entities that are showing interest in joining us, and we're hoping that they will. But these are not the only things that we are doing. So I'm going to play a video from our House Representative, Brent Money. He sent this over yesterday, so y'all can kind of have an idea of what else we're doing, and then we also have his district director here, and we'll introduce him in a minute.
Good evening, Van Zandt County. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you tonight. I wish I could be there in person, but we're down in here in Austin trying to fight for lower taxes, school choice, all the things that I campaigned on. But now we have an issue that I didn't campaign on. It wasn't an issue during the campaign, and that is this BESS lithium battery facility and other projects like that in both Van Zandt County and around the state. And so I want to talk to you about some of the approaches we are taking. Lots of legislators are looking into this, and there are a lot of innovative ways to try to address these issues, and my staff is combing through those and trying to find the best ones for us to help support. I want to talk to you about three in particular. One is Senate Bill 934, filed by our own Senator Bob Hall, and his bill will require any of these green energy projects to not have components of software that comes from foreign adversary nations. It's a great approach. It ensures kind of national security, and we will be doing everything we can to help that. We're in discussions with his office about being House sponsors of that bill when it comes over. Second, we're talking about changing the fire code. Right now, as you know, most of these facilities are being built in areas that are served by volunteer fire departments, and as capable as those men and women are, they usually lack the training and the equipment necessary to deal with fires in lithium battery storage facilities. And so this bill would require the facility to provide adequate training and adequate equipment to deal with those fires, and they would do that at their expense instead of at taxpayer expense. But finally, the bill that I'm most excited about is a bill that we will be introducing, filing very soon, which requires anyone that is trying to get one of these BESS facilities or any other industrial project out in an unincorporated area of the county, they would be required to get a permit from the county commissioner's court after 2 public hearings at least 30 days apart. That would give the public adequate time to let their elected officials hear from them and let the elected officials make the decision that is best for the county. Right now, the counties have no authority, in fact, almost nobody has any authority to stop the kinds of developments that are happening in unincorporated areas. So this would provide a new tool and would allow the government that is the closest to the people to make that decision instead of bureaucrats in Austin. So those are the things we're working on. If you have other ideas that you think would be helpful or information you think that would help us, please email us at district2, that's the number 2.money@house.texas.gov. We read all of our emails. We'll respond to you. If you are going to be coming down to Austin, or if you're willing to come back down to Austin to testify on this bill or any other bills that we're working on, we'd love to hear from you. Anyway, looking forward to seeing you guys soon. Thank you.
Legislation plays a huge role in what we need in reference to have more of a say of what goes into our county. So up next to expand on that, we have Money's District Director, Matthew Hernandez here. He's going to go ahead and elaborate further on some of the legislation as well.
Thank you. You can hear me? Good. So I'm Matt Hernandez. Most of y'all know who I am, but I am Brent Money's District Director. And just to let you know, I moved here to Canton area 3 years ago. And one of the main reasons I'm moving away from the city, but one of the main reasons why I moved out here is I wanted to get away from the light pollution and the sound pollution. And I think that I can contest to most people here enjoy our country living. And that's the beautiful part of what we have here in Texas. But as you can see, now that's getting infringed on by these other companies. So Brent said it right. 3 things, and I'm also working with Senator Bob Hall's office. So I'm in constant communication. We're talking about different legislation that we can put together and that we can companion on the House side. Vice versa, the things that we're going to push on the House side, Bob's office is also going to push on his side. That way we can work together and try to get something in the system that's regulated. That's the problem, right? We don't have a lot of regulations out there to protect us. Now, Texas is a state that's about personal rights. That's a state that honors people's properties, and we don't want to infringe on property rights, and we don't want to infringe on other issues that could be personal. However, when you start dealing with other people and your neighbors are getting impacted from this, then we got to do something about that. So, the fire code is a great thing. We want to be able to supply our fire department that, because what? They target the unincorporated areas, right? So these are volunteer fire departments. And they are under-equipped, and they don't have a lot of people. They just don't have the capacity to handle something like this. But what we're doing, I'm going to take it back a little bit. 254 counties, right? Texas has 254 counties. Majority of those counties are what? Rural. And so these companies know that since they don't have regulations, they can keep targeting this. And that's why the third point that Brent put out, and there's other legislation that we're working with, and we're also working with a think tank of other legislators of how we can target this. This is a thing that's being talked about now at the Capitol. And so that's good news, right? We need to bring awareness to the situation, and we need to try to figure out a solution moving forward. But that third aspect, one thing I heard the most in talking to Cliff, right, is that, look, as a commissioner, we don't have a say in this. We don't have anything that could protect this, but we're going to try to get the power back to the local community, right? Give the power back to your elected officials that they can make a decision after public hearings, right? Because we want to give everyone an opportunity to understand who's coming in, what's coming in, and how we're going to move forward, and then they're going to vote on that. So there's a little more accountability with the local people and the local leadership of how we can kind of alleviate some of these issues. But we thank you. We're still learning a lot of information. We're still trying to figure out what to do. And if y'all have any good information or good insight or some legislation that y'all want to push, please let me know, and then we can try to get this together. I'll be staying here afterwards in the back if y'all want to talk to me, but I appreciate y'all's time.
So I'm just going to kind of expand on some of those bills. Bob Hall's bill, the Senate 934, that one is in reference to foreign software being integrated into our grid. Remember I told you these are all operated by CATL, a foreign company, a foreign entity. This is a big deal. We do not want foreign entities that have no fealty to America to have impact to our energy. We don't want them to have impact to our electric, whether it's malicious or unintentional. And that is important. But there are other bills out there by Troxclair, by Burdell, by Patterson, by Colhurst. I can never say that, I'm sorry, it's a hard name for me. But there are multiple bills out there that need to be looked at and even improved on even. Because in my opinion, Texas being primarily an agricultural state, not only should we have a say, but they shouldn't be able to build next to primary water sources. They should not be able to build next to livestock or ag-exempt land, especially if they're going to have impacts of this. One of the things that the Dallas fire captain said is they have infrastructure, they have industrial areas where they can build that are away from people, away from our land. They have hazmat and fire of their own on site that will not require ours. They should go somewhere that is like that will not impact our land, impact our water, impact our livestock. It will not impact our way of life. If you remember Chris Dyer's video, having that sound by your back door. He is terrified to let his granddaughter play in the backyard should an incident occur. And what are the impacts to the off-put of those high electrician? So we're looking at things like that. So what I have done is I've created a petition to support our legislators. We want to be able to put in their hands evidence that Texas is not okay with this and we want this addressed. That is the purpose of this petition, to be able to show evidence of voice that we are not okay with the way things are progressing. Now look, I know that we just threw a lot of information out there, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you how to reach me, and then I'll answer any questions you have. So it was brought to my attention, I also did not introduce myself. I am Nancy White. This is literally the first time I've ever done this, so just thank you for being patient. You can reach me at, thank you. Thank you, everybody. This is not my comfort zone, for the record. I'm a wife, a mom, I garden, I homeschool. This is not my forte, but I want to help. And so you can reach me at solutionsforvanzant@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page. We also have a group Facebook page. It is Van Zant County Community Updates and Efforts on BESS Solar and Wind. We also have a Facebook or a website, ruralrightsmatter.com, because we do matter, and our opinions matter, and our input matters. So ruralrightsmatter.com. And then you can also, on the petition, find a phone number to reach me as well if you have any further questions or want to reach out. I will help in any way that I can, but I will answer questions if anybody wants to ask one. Yes, ma'am?
I don't understand what the point is.
Let everybody hear your question.
Okay.
Thanks, Doc.
I just want to know, what is the selling point for these companies to come here? What is our county getting out of this? What are we getting out of it?
So I'm going to tell you why they're here, and I'm going to tell you what the benefit is to the county, but I'm going to tell you it has nothing to do with our county or state. So under Biden, there is a tax code that he put in and amended. It is the Inflation Reduction Act, Utility or Energy Tax Code 48 is the section, A3AIX. This is a huge reason as to why they're here. This was put in 2022. You'll see most of the contracts for these 900 were started between 22 and 23. It starts with a base tax credit of 6%, but then it builds from there. If they choose an unincorporated area, they get an additional 10% tax credit. If they choose an area that is primarily fossil fuel, such as an oil boom county, for instance, an additional 10%. If they choose to build it at a smaller capacity, like, 100 megawatts, an additional 10%. So for every million that they spend, they get a minimum of $500,000 back in their pocket. It is highly beneficial for investors to build these the way that they are. Now, what the companies will tell you is they're doing it to help your school. It's not the county, it's the schools. Meanwhile, they're building these next to our children in the schools, okay? So it's to help the schools, not the county. Meanwhile, our schools didn't ask for this. We don't have an input. It's not our county primarily getting the benefits.
Nancy, would you inform everybody what part of this project that $90 million is coming from, where it's coming from?
We do not have evidence, I have not found evidence, but it shows that about 40, my understanding is 40 million of this project is getting through an energy loan through our tax money. I have not been able to track down the exact location, but it shows that there is, through the energy, so it's the Department of Energy gives different loans to different ones. It doesn't matter if they're foreign or American. They use our tax money to build it. So whereas like this build site is 90 million, they would get 40 million. But their highest profit comes from those tax credits. So that's what she was stating is go over the tax credit and what they're doing. So one of the things we met with the owner of this company recently, they do a 20-year contract. They're doing a 20-year lease. So you have a foreign entity leasing American land, and they are grandfathered in. So even if Trump passes an executive order right now, they already have 7 years of these tax credits. And what I find most interesting is even if they sell it, they can transfer those. Even if it's not someone related to this build, they can transfer those tax credits. And another thing is they automatically get the tax credits. They can underproduce where we have to pay for it and they don't actually produce energy, they cost energy, and they still get those tax benefits. Even if they produce nothing, they still get those tax benefits. And this company in particular, which I find interesting at Amador, is they plan to sell in about 7 to 8 years.
Another question.
I have a question about, I assume most of these plants are individual LLCs, right?
I like
And
that.
that's to limit liability if there's a problem. Who insures these from catastrophes?
So
now,
let me.
The LLC, if there's a big catastrophe, the LLC rolls up and the taxpayers in every community takes the brunt of the cost. Shouldn't we require, considering all the failures of FEMA and all the failures of all these recovery techniques, require insurance on every site made by a commercial insurer who's going to go look and see whether or not there's proper fire departments, proper amounts of assurance of how much risk there is? And I think if you do that, a lot of these will start disappearing.
So I can.
Cliff, why don't you come up here and help answer?
I'm going to let you answer the last part, but I'm going to explain the LLC part because this is important. This is significant. So that limited liability, pretty much all of these are contracted or leased through limited liability. And what you're looking at is what that does is if something goes wrong, they can just shut down the LLC and it doesn't impact their pocketbook. And what's happening is these landowners are under the impression that they're protected because of these contracts. And then the contracts that's going to cover cleanup and decommissioning. So they don't need to worry about it. But what happens to that cleanup and stuff if the LLC goes under? So for instance, that closes down. Who's now liable for the cleanup? It's the landowner. And the landowner cannot afford the decommissioning because it's typically about 2 to 3 times the cost of the build. So if it's a $90 million build, you're looking at about $250 million at least to deconstruct it and fix the land from its contaminants at that point, minimum. And it takes at least 10 years for it to get back to what it would have been, and that's if you're lucky. And then more than likely, the landowner would not be able to sustainably clean this up. So then it would fall on the county, who again cannot afford $250 million for one site, let alone 7. So what ends up happening is we end up becoming what's called a super fund to the state. EPA would have to come in and clean it up, and we would be in debt to the state for that cleanup. But I will let Cliff explain the decommissioning aspect of 855.
Well, one of the things that we're waiting, that we're kind of helping with the legislation is requiring bonds and insurance. That's one of those areas that if we have the ability to commission these things and we have the ability to put restrictions, then in legislation, if they will give us the ability, because we're like the federal government. The federal government doesn't listen, but they only have the rules that they specifically have written down. But there's not anybody to keep them, to hold their feet to the fire. On the county, we only have the abilities that are specifically enumerated in our Texas Constitution, in our rules, in our laws. So we have used those, but we're asking our legislators to give us the ability to require insurance and give us the ability to force them to have reclamation bonds that they buy beforehand, in the range of $200 million. You want a $90 million? Okay, you got to put $270 million in bond, and if you clean it up and you get that bond released, you're right. If they had to do that, I think they'll go somewhere else. But one other thing I wanted to mention that I had thought about. Some people say that they're coming out to these small counties because we don't have any regulations. That's not. I wouldn't characterize it that way. If you're going to buy, they have 48 acres over here. If you're going to buy a lease or you're going to buy property in Van Zandt, the price per acre compared to what you would pay in Dallas is substantially different. So they're coming here because our cost per acre is manageable. And the less they spend on the build, the more money they make on the backside. So it doesn't really have anything to do, that's not why they're not putting it in Dallas or Houston, they're not doing it because it costs a lot of money to put it in those large markets.
Well, I may have missed it, but where's ERCOT and PUC? Where's our Public Utility Commission and ERCOT at?
That's exactly why we're doing the 391. The 391 says, where are you? What are you doing? When Nancy called the Parks and Wildlife, and when she called TCEQ, and when she's called these other state agencies, they say, we are reactive. We're not going to go out there in advance. We're going to wait till they screw up, and then we'll go do something. Well, that doesn't help us. That fish are already dead. Cows are already dead. Children are already dead. That doesn't work. So we're going to use the 391 specifically to ask those questions. Why hasn't PUC or ERCOT done something?
The lawyer at TCEQ, I spoke to one that had been there for 15 years, and as well as EPA, one of their supervisors, their direct verbiage was aftermath. They said aftermath is when they get involved. The 391 requires them to do it proactively instead of after the fact. But I will also tell you that our Senator Hall has met with PUC at least twice to figure out where the fall through is, and that's part of why his bill is what it is, just so you know.
I have a question. You said that they're getting tax abatements. I'm assuming that's on their federal taxes?
The abatements are separate. They do pay property tax, but there are some getting abatements. The one in our county are not. The one I was referring to was specifically tax credit when they file their taxes.
And on those property taxes, do they tax them on the income approach to value, or how do they determine their taxable value?
My understanding is it's the build cost. It's not about what they're making in general.
And see, to me, that should be on the income approach to value, just like you do a motel, apartments and all, so that you can, I mean, if they're coming, at least you would be able to get a lot of tax base out of that.
Yes, they do not do it based off, so like I mentioned, they could produce nothing or even cause a negative input and that negative return, and they still get the tax credits. It's based off of the cost of the bills, not what they're actually making from it, is my understanding.
I will tell you this, though, that there are many counties in Texas that are giving them tax abatements so that they can put rules. They say you have to be this far away. You have to put it over there. You've got to get it away from the water. And so in order to do that, it's just ringing so you got to get it away from the water. So they're giving them tax rebates, giving them tax abatements from the county taxes so they can force them to do certain things that the county wants done.
Actually, in Rains County, I'm going to add on that. Rains County actually had them buy the fire personnel police drones as part of their abatement. They agreed to it if they got the county drones, as well as upgraded their comm systems for law enforcement. Was part of their, we'll give you an abatement if you do this.
I don't know. So I've got a couple. Moss Landing, it's all in the news now. Comparatively in size.
Moss Landing is 500 megawatts, so it's about 5 times, I believe. Larger than the, well, it depends on, so the Amador site is 100 megawatt, whereas the Moss Landing, that particular section at Bistro, I believe was 500. So it's about 5 times larger, but I don't know the exact build sizes for the other locations yet. So it could be one in our county that size.
And secondly, you touched on it a little bit, and you said all of these contracts are already in place. So all the work that's being done in Austin, all the future bills, will not affect what is currently under contract.
Yes and no. So remember I told you Bob Halls is in reference to the software. If it's not operational, it can be stopped. That's a significant one. And what I've seen is a lot of these contracts were started in 22 and 23, but they're not really starting build until 25 and 26, which I thought was suspicious because why wait the 2 years? And then we learned earlier this week that you can't file for nuisance any further after 2 years. I know, it's interesting, huh?
Yeah, nuisance was the basis of the lawsuit that the landowners filed against the folks. It's just my ringing voice that's causing the problem.
Last question, based on hers, is not are they paying taxes, but what have you in your research? What is this doing to surrounding property taxes? If we live next door across the street or something like that, what is that doing to our taxes?
It completely. So, going back to Chris Dyer, he and his wife were were looking to try to move because of the build. Well, technically they were trying to move because of retirement. They wanted to move closer to their grandkids is what it was. At that time they lived in Dallas, so they were going to move to Dallas. They ended up not being able to sell their home because they had to disclose to everybody that they were building this. And when they disclosed it, nobody wanted to buy the home. They did not want to do it. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So they can't sell their home. They can't do anything with it. And then on top of that, as far as value, I asked him if he had the value currently. He did not. But based off of realtors and other discussions we've had, you can't sell your home.
I can't hear you in the back.
Okay, does it work still? Can you hear me? Okay, so you can't sell your home. Nobody wants to buy it because nobody wants to live near a toxic explosive plant. So the exact numbers I don't have, but I can tell you that nobody's had any success to date moving away from them or selling their home. You have it? She has it.
No, I know. I want to address the lawsuit though. Okay.
So in regards to the lawsuit, when it comes to the nuisance law, yes, state of Texas says that you have 2 years from the time that it starts to be able to file the nuisance law. But do know that with our legal counsel, we are fighting that because of the fact that they had not broken ground 2 years ago. So if y'all are worried about the lawsuit is still going. We actually just filed some more paperwork 2 days ago with them. So even though that they've waited 2 years, we're still pushing to say, hey, they did not break ground, they have not started anything. So we're still pushing forward with that. What else in regards to property taxes? Our legal representation says that he does have proof what it does to the property taxes. I know that he had submitted that in the paperwork this week to the opposing counsel. I don't know a whole lot about it, but those two things we are pushing on, just an FYI.
I have a question about, they say they're going to train the firemen. Okay, I'm a volunteer fireman. You come and train me. Now I can go to Dallas and go to work. Guess what? We just lost our firemen. And they're 15, 30 minutes away from the fire station. There's not enough of them to even let 20 people around the area know, hey, you need to leave. That's like blowing in the wind. It ain't going to do no good. Neither is a drone.
If you remember in that video, it said that it took 9 fire teams, like fire departments. It wasn't just one fire department. It took 9. In some cases, you're looking at over 10 fire departments needed on site because they're not there just for 1 or 2 hours. They're there for days, sometimes weeks, and even up to a month in some instances. They're not just there for 1 or 2. Keep in mind, Moss Landing has been burning since January 16th. They need fire personnel on site since January 16th. And you're not looking for like, they show up and they leave and they come back. No, you have to have them there 24/7. And I would like you to consider how much manpower, money, and time that takes for that. Yeah, water. That's especially in Van Zandt County and areas where we don't have that kind of water.
That's not life. You're talking about loss of life. You're talking about your children.
With federal funding, perhaps grants or incentives to drive these developments, where is the environmental impact statement?
They do have an environmental impact statement that they have turned into, but it's a generic environmental impact statement. They did have a company that came out and looked at the environment around this. But again, it's a generic, we believe it's not going to be that big a deal. I just compacted 25 pages of environmental statement because their testing is done by the underwriter labs. They don't have an opportunity, being an underwriter lab testing facility, they don't have the same opportunity to just fudge stuff. But a company that says, my environmental impact, I believe it's not going to be that big of a deal. And they leave it at that. That was what I got from their environmental impact study.
I live in Edgewood, and I'm wondering about the water. Knowing that we have Edgewood water and South Walton water, how are they coming getting around that, knowing that there's no way those two entities can sustain that, or what they need as far as water?
Well, that's their problem. We are going to hold their feet to the fire that they have to have a permanent source of water for each of these facilities, even the one in Edgewood.
Right, so if they, how do they get, I mean, I'm asking, do they get around into other places? How do they go around?
I don't know what they do in other places. This is a new issue. This is a new problem in Texas. And quite honestly, others may be able to set me straight, but we're breaking ground here. This Commissioner's Court and our 391 and these things, they're not being done in the rest of the state.
So I want to expand on two things. To answer your question, as far as I know, there have been 0 successful, where anybody's used the NFPA 855. I was reached out to by Kendall and Kerr County, who voted in their 391 around the same time we did. I actually just gave them the number yesterday to our fire marshal, who's done a significant amount of research, because they had not used NFP 855 specifically for the water. So they reached out to our fire marshal to figure out how he did that. So they've been doing this for over a year. I want to emphasize just how well our elected officials have done. I know a lot of people are frustrated with them, but let me explain this. Multiple counties have been doing this since 2023. I learned of it in November. I found the 391 in November. We have worked together with multiple entities in our county to move this since November. We're in February now. We've established 855. We've established a 391. We've met with legislation. These entities have been doing it for nearly 2 years, and we have covered more ground in that time frame. They are calling us and thanking us for setting a precedent. And I know that it seems frustrating, but imagine doing this for 2 years and still coming to someone that's been doing it for basically 4 months, 3 months, and saying, what are you doing and how are you having success? And then also, I'm going to go back to your environmental question. In their environmental impact statement, they listed that there were protected and endangered species on that property. They noted it. On top of that, on the fence line, you have those bald eagles and the bald eagle nest currently in mating season. On the Parks and Wildlife website, it states if they are in mating season, ongoing construction can directly impact the production of their eggs, the reproduction of their species. Meanwhile, Parks and Wildlife sent me through a runaround, would not help me, and in the end basically gave me the same answer that EPA and TCEQ did. Aftermath only. So after it's already been done. So as far as what's being done for the environmental protection, nothing right now, which is why I personally want to require them to get involved in reference to the 391, because you only want to handle aftermath, but what about our eagles that are currently in mating season? What's going to go with them? They're definitely a protected species. They have multiples, at least 2 more out there that they are not addressing that are endangered or protected, and they're still building.
I'd like to say a few things. I'm a volunteer fire department too. I met with the company along with other volunteer firefighters down here at South Patterson County on 64. We met with the company. They painted a picture that was real glowing, needless to say. Didn't mention anything about the volume of water. Talked like there wouldn't be a runaway, things like that, tried to reassure us. And then, as you dug into the underlying, what we've heard here today, things are brought to light. And I want to commend this young lady right here, Nancy White. And she deserves a lot of credit. She wasn't even politically active until we kind of bumped into each other not too long ago, and I said, man, you need to come on board and help. And she did. And Cliff here is brand new to the Commissioner's Court. He brings a great perspective from what his knowledge is and being an attorney and the things that he's done. And I want to thank you too. And I want to commend everybody that's here. Everybody has something that they can do. It's time for us to get up and get it done. We've been falling asleep here, and we need to wake up as to what's going on. And this county is about to be inundated with a lot of people coming from Metroplex and that sort of thing, and we're growing. So let's band together. Let's do what we need to do for our county. And again, I thank y'all for being here. Let's a couple more questions.
Sure.
All right.
Could I say one thing while you're taking the mic to her? There is a notification system that is active in Van Zandt County now. If you would like to search it on the fire marshal's page, it's right under his name. You can click there, you can input your information, where you live, and your phone number, and that will get you connected to our emergency notification so that you can receive telephone calls and texts in the event that there is some kind of an issue in around where you live or the address that you register.
Thank you. I know that this is a county and a state issue, but since you're having issues with wildlife and EPA and things, has Senator Cruz or anyone at the federal level been brought in on what's really going on in the state? I would seem like the legislatures would want a little bit of input of something to help stop some of these agencies with their regulations. They can't go into California and do stuff because of a fish or a bug or something. Why is it that they can come into Texas and do whatever they want with eagles and all of our endangered species and all our agriculture?
I have been meeting with several of them. They have been made aware. I've emailed Troxclair. I have been talking to Money. I have been in contact with Hall's office. I have reached out to Patterson. Anybody that I mentioned that has a bill, I have reached out or spoken to them, including Sparks. I have met with his team, Cliff, and our fire marshal and I have sat in a meeting with him a couple weeks ago, going over multiple details. So we are doing that very thing.
So I know you're totally vested in this, and I've been watching you since you entered the battle. There's 50 people here tonight, which is a pretty good turnout on Thursday night.
When it's freezing.
When it's freezing, right? So, in your heart of hearts, what would you like for each person to do here tonight? Like what do you hope that they do, specifically an action point? Just one, because they drank out of a fire hose tonight. So when they walk out of here, I mean, you have to be blind to know that, not to see that this is not a good thing for anybody. So what can they do? One thing that you hope that they do, is it Brent Money? Is it Bob Hall's office? What do you want to see them do tonight?
I have 3 actions that I would ideally like to see come of this. The first is to sign the petition and show your support to all legislation. There's enough things going on at the House. We need to be very clear on where Texas stands in writing. That's number 1. Second, I feel there are so many bills out there that are super important, including the 2 primary ones being Hall and Verdell. Those I recommend calling any of your friends, family in the state of Texas, all across Texas. Share the petition with them, but also encourage them to call their representatives and say, can you support this bill? We have problems. Not just East Texas, West Texas, South Texas, North Texas, all the above, all across Texas. We need them everywhere. The petition needs to go statewide, and we need to notify them. And now this last one's a bit more of Van Zandt County. Now, as it is, there is only one build site that is broken ground in Van Zandt County, and that is the Witten location. Most of you know by now that the lawsuit is going on. That is being funded directly by the neighbors' pockets. My point being that if it was in your backyard, would you want your neighbors and the other fellow members of your county standing with you? I just want to say, if you feel called to, help those neighbors. I've helped them in any way I can. I have a 1-income household. I homeschool my kids. We don't have a lot of money, but if I can help, I do. Because you have individuals funding this all on their own, trying to protect their home. But if it's in your backyard, there's 7 more coming. If it's in your backyard, what would you want done for you? Those are the 3 things. So petition statewide, have them talk to their legislators to support these bills, and help your neighbors. Those are the 3 primary things I'm looking at. Yes, ma'am.
I'm scared to death. There is an 800-acre solar and BESS facility going in across the unpaved road from my house.
Mm-hmm.
It is in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're all that we've talked about has to do with the Witten one. Is this gonna cover all of the ones that are going on in Van Zandt County?
I'm going to address that. So no, this particular lawsuit is only for the Amador location. With that being said, it sets a precedence for anybody else that wants to come in. So while I understand your fear, because this is literally in my backyard, I can see this every day from my window, okay? So while I understand you're like, hey, I've got one possibly coming in, if we don't get this one stopped, you can guarantee it's coming in. Also, I want to add that we were told last week that Amador, so it's, again, it's an LLC, they have insurance on this project. Their insurance company is looking at taking over the lawsuit for them and countersuing us. So, again, yes, this is in my backyard, but if something goes south, it's going to go further than my backyard. Nancy, what was Moss Landing? How many miles?
8.
8 miles.
Evacuated.
So yes, this is in my backyard, but this is also 8 miles radius around this particular site. So I hear what you're saying, but if we can stop this one, I guarantee you the other ones are going to think twice before coming in.
And I want to add that if you end up having to go to a lawsuit, I will help you. Just like I've helped them.
We're trying to organize now. We don't know what to do though.
Well, I would also say that as a part of the efforts that we are taking on the county level is that they'll know in advance that they have to fill out the application, they have to go through all of the steps, they'll need permanent water, they will need to provide us with all of their testing materials. So we're much further along now than we were when the Amador people started there. When Amador started, we were like, what's a BESS?
Yeah.
So...
And also, I will tell you, when we met with their legal team, I don't believe that they would have gotten as far if the community was aware, because I think, again, they flew from Finland and were speaking with us last week, that I think they were very taken back by the resistance and everything that's coming from our community. So you've got a leg up, but you've got the 391, you've got the 855, you've got, the uproar of the community before they're even thinking about breaking ground. So just keep that in mind, that everything that the county is doing is proactive for anything else moving forward, but right now for Amador, it's reactive.
Yeah, I would also add that there are counties around us that are welcoming these programs in. There's a county to the south of us. We have 45 pods on 48 acres. Now, they are all jammed up together. They're not spread out on this. But there's a county south of us, Henderson County, on their loop. They have 278 pods on 25 acres. So, and that's on the north end of their loop, right there by 19 where Highway 7 is, just to the east of that. So they have 278 battery pods on 25 acres. So we have these coming in around us, and there are counties, and we've told them, look, there are places you can go. We're not really interested.
Isn't there a bill that I've seen recently that said that you cannot turn agricultural land over to green energy land somewhere? I don't know if it was federal or state, but I swear I've seen that somewhere.
Well, let's do this. We have Jennifer Aldrin here from Gooden's office. Do you know if there's been one like that?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I'm not either. Melinda, have you heard of that one? No. I haven't heard of one like that, but we can definitely look into it. But we do have, just to be clear, we have members here that are not just state, but federal, paying attention to us. They are listening. That is an important detail.
And I want to say something to this lady. She mentioned Senator Cruz, who of course is federal level, he's not state, and Congressman did write a letter to the EPA last year, the end of last year, that was Biden's EPA. So that letter was going to go nowhere. And one of the things I've spoken to Nancy about is that the
You didn't catch that. It said investing in rural America is how Biden worded this.
Yes, so that gives you the psychology behind these companies. They think they're investing in your area, when we know that's really not what is happening.
And I'm gonna jump on that.
Right now, it's gone because now Trump's picture is on there, thank God. But that's the psyche behind what they've been doing. There's no way to stop that funding on the federal side, that's a law. The only way is to overturn that law. A lot of the funding is coming through a law, not necessarily grants. There's a difference.
Also, just so you know, that letter that I mentioned earlier about Rubio, Cruz signed that too. He was on that signature as well. He was one of them that signed it. So he's aware that this is a national security issue.
I also want to add real quick in regards to the investing part into our community. Again, met with I don't even know how to pronounce the company's name. Tulare. Met with them. They flew in from Finland. Met with their lawyer. And they kept saying over and over again, this is money coming into your community. This is money coming into your, I mean, they were trying to beat it into us. So just kind of keep that in mind. When she said that they're talking about investing, they are really spinning this, that they're doing us a favor by coming into our community and the amount of money that they want to give to the community with the taxes.
Another question. Wait.
Nancy, you mentioned us helping our neighbors, like the neighbors around the Witten site. Is that what you're talking about?
Helping with the lawsuit if you can. If you feel called to.
You're talking about monetary help.
Well, even information helps. So if you find something that I don't have, that even helps too, honestly. But if you have $1 or $2, that helps.
Do they have a GoFundMe page?
So, we do have a GoFundMe page, but we also have other options. What I can do is I can post it on our website, our Facebook page tonight. If we go through GoFundMe, they get a percentage of it.
Well, we don't want them having any money.
No.
But we do have other options. We have an escrow account. I can give you the lawyer's name where you can send money to him directly. So I have other options, but I will post it on our Facebook page later tonight.
Those options do include, so I was going to say those options do include paying the lawyer directly so that you don't have to go between.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that Facebook page. What's the name of it?
Name and Facebook.
I got it for you right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Hold on. Yes, that's yours. What I'm going to do, I'm going to answer about a few more questions, and we got to wrap up in about 9 minutes. So we'll try to get as many as we can, okay?
Just one thing about signing the petition, it's by a company called change.org.
Thank you.
And they will ask at the bottom, please donate. I think it's $7. Don't donate to them. Just sign the petition. Donate to the lawsuit.
Thank you for pointing that out. So it'll ask that it'll say if you want to donate, just do share instead or bypass that. Do not pay the website, please. It doesn't go to us. Bypass that.
There are many of us who value what little privacy we have, and we do not do Facebook, Twitter, or any of those. So how do we get a hold of it?
Find me after this, and I will give you the email address. You can email Nancy, but I do have an email address that is vclawsuitdonation@gmail.com. But again, you can contact Nancy, and then we can get it to you. One thing I do want to say was brought to my attention that if anybody that is living by any of these proposed sites, if you get a letter in the mail or you get a certified letter in the mail, please go get it.
Yep.
Because Tulare said that they didn't get any feedback from the letters that they sent. Actually, only 2, which is how I found out the one with the proposed site for more batteries later on. But I think there was maybe a handful of us that got letters. So if you get a letter, make sure you call, make sure you send emails, because that way it can be tracked. But if you get anything regarding certified letters, it might be coming that way too.
I have a question. What is the lease rate going on? What are they paying people for lease rate?
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
He's asking how much people are getting paid for the property.
Yeah, we're not aware of, from our perspective, I was in oil and gas for 20 years before I changed over to private practice. And it's very customary to say $10 another valuable consideration so that we don't tell the next person that they could have got a little bit more. So we don't know what Mr. Amador got, and we don't know whether or not they might receive that information in discovery of the lawsuit.
That's exactly what we're waiting for.
So, in regards to that, my name's Ben Orr. I have land that's right next to the Tulare site. So, in 21, they were sending out letters to try to lease information. They were offering, on the letter, if I remember right, it was $12,500 an acre. Is what they were looking at on the letter that I got.
And was that paid one time? It wasn't an annual payment?
No, my understanding is it's broken up over 5 years on that. So, but it was a landman coming around handing out to the people that were next to the railroad station.
I also want to add real quick that one of my other neighbors that is next to the Amador site, that they've got solar turbine people trying to lease their land to put, not solar, excuse me, windmills, to try to put windmills right by the Amador site.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up so I can put the mic down. But anybody that wants to talk to me or Cliff or Matt or anybody else, just please come ask us questions and reach out if you have any questions, okay?
Thank you all for coming.